No, not quite. So it's the same language, it's 10-4. And so you're familiar, obviously, sort of the right. So Strider's riddle with the was Wanderlust. Everything the Wanderer was modeled lion. So that being so and so, oh my gosh.
Started with this next thing. Okay. All right, gentlemen, mostly. There are a few ladies in the room that are not up here already. So we are going to do a women in coaching panel. So I'm Eve Julian. I am the NISCA secretary and webmaster. And so if you have anything to do with NISCA, you have gotten many emails from me. So that's how you know me. I also coach the boys swim team at Ottawa Hills High School in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I'm going to let you guys all introduce yourselves.
I am Tamara Bretting, and I'm from Laramie, Wyoming. I joined NISCA last year. I've been Tom Hudson's assistant coach for 14 years. He's retired now, and I took on my first year as head coach this year.
Hi, I'm Nathalie Jones. I am the head coach for girls and boys swim and dive at Wisconsin Rapids Lincoln High School. So I've done 8 seasons with the girls, and I just wrapped up my 4th season with the boys.
I'm Diane Hicks-Hughes. I'm New York, and I've been coaching at Lansing, the same school, for 43 years. I do boys and girls, and I'm still having fun.
I'm Marney Shirley. I'm from Jamestown, North Dakota. I am a retired coach. I coached 41 years of girls and 16 years of boys at Jamestown.
All right. So I have a couple of questions, and you can jump right in here if you have a good answer for it. So how did you get started in coaching?
I can answer that one because I was here almost as longest. I started teaching. I started in 1970. I graduated in 1970 from college, and I was told that if I coached the girls' swim team, I could teach school at their facility. So I was hired, and they say they never do that, but that was the thing: is that you coach girls swimming, you can teach here.
Anybody else?
Funny enough, that is how I got hired.
Is that right?
Yeah, oddly enough. So 2015, I applied for several different teaching jobs, and Wisconsin Rapids called me, and they had asked initially what my interest was in swimming because they were looking for a swim coach, and they had a PE position open, and I said, well, I'd happily assist. I have no head coaching experience. Last time I coached was 8 and unders when I was 18 for my club team. And I got the phone call from HR, and they said, you can come, but we'll only take you if you coach the girls team. And that's how I ended up, and I've been there ever since.
Awesome. I started because I knew I wanted swimming since 4th grade. I knew I was going to be a phys ed teacher. I knew it was going to be aquatics. And I wasn't real impressed with my high school coach because it was the first year we had high school swimming for women in New York State. And I said, I'm going to be a better coach.
Well, I had wanted to be a teacher always, and when I first started teaching, I just volunteered a couple days a week with Tom, and then he roped me into coaching the middle school season with him after the high school seasons were done, and oh man. But then opening for an assistant coaching job happened for the next year, and he asked me if I wanted to do the high school jobs, and I said absolutely, and never looked back.
So I started coaching because I went into teaching because I knew I wanted to coach. So I thought, well, teaching would be a good place for me to go. And my first job, I was hired as a science teacher, which they were real excited. And they were even more excited because I said, oh yeah, and I'd like to coach swimming. So same thing, you can coach the girls team. It'll be great. Which I did. And then I decided that teaching was not for me and moved back to my hometown and volunteered on the pool deck at the high school where I went to school and then ended up taking over the position. So, yeah. All right, so next question. Who were your mentors and or supporters when you were first getting started?
Mine was my athletic director and my superintendent. They were very keen on me coaching kids and staying there, and I taught K through 12 swimming only. So I saw the kids in kindergarten and introduced them. But my AD was a huge part of why I am still enjoying what I do.
For me, my first assistant coach, she was the head coach for the boys, but she did not want the responsibility of head coaching girls. So she introduced me to everyone in our conference, got me started on writing workouts, and it was great because when there were days where I had like mandatory meetings for teaching, like I knew I didn't have to worry about writing a workout because she's like, yep, I can take them. She did a really good job of leading me through, and then she had to step down because she had another kid. But then from there, my husband actually, I was very fortunate. He's, or was, a college strength coach. So he got into the coaching world well before I did, before I thought that was a possibility or even an idea for me. That was his dream. And he's been very supportive of everything. And he's great whenever I come to him with questions. And he's been phenomenal.
Well, I say every single coach that I've ever had has been a good model for me, and that's got me interested in coaching. Tom Hudson has been an amazing mentor. Couldn't have done this without him. I never thought I would want to be a head coach until he started approaching retirement and putting that bug in my ear, and definitely got excited about it over the past several years. And then just the support in our district has been amazing. Our athletic directors, our principals, the families, it's just our community paid for an amazing facility that we have now through a bond issue, and it's just been really, really a supportive environment for me.
Well, my first mentor would have been my Phi Ed teacher, and she was also my coach. She coached me in swimming. We only had club swimming at that time. In fact, it was AAU swimming, and it was just summer. And this teacher, she became our gymnastics coach. It's the first sport that we ever had at Jamestown High School. And she coached me in gymnastics, and then she thought, well, we'll run track. So we ran track. And then from her influence, North Dakota kind of took off in the sports scene. And swimming started at my school in 1968, and I started there. There was only 2 other coaches before I came. And there's only been 1 other coach since I retired in the girls program. And it really was her. And then the previous, or the boys coach had a lot of influence too. He taught swimming, even though he was an administrator. And that's kind of where you got started. And then I got involved in some of the other activities, and that kind of gave you the information that you needed to be a coach. I didn't know how to be a swimming coach when I started. It's just, I bought a book and said, okay, read the book and see what you can do with it.
Mine was my high school coach. I adored him. He was like a second father to me. And then when I graduated, I did swim in college for a little while. I did not like my college coach as much, but I did learn a lot from him. And then came back and got a chance to be an assistant coach for my high school coach, which was really cool because it is a different, like you get a different view of that side of things, going from swimmer to the guy on the pool deck. So, and then moving back to Michigan, there were a couple of guys in the surrounding area that had been coaches when I was in high school and remembered me as a high school swimmer that were hugely influential, Butch Briggs and Tim Jaspers, and later on Denny and Liz Hill, all, like heroes of mine who were free and forthcoming with anything that I needed. So that was always really nice. All right, so since this is a women in coaching panel, we're gonna ask, what issues have you faced as a female coach that you don't think your male counterparts normally have to deal with?
Well, I have one. I was talking to Ian about this a little bit. When you leave and your kids like start crying because you're going again, like why can't you just stay home for a weekend? That's not something that's exclusive to women at all. But the gender role expectations of society are a little bit different, and so judgment from family or community members that you're leaving your kids behind all the time might be a little different. I don't know. I've never been on the other side of that. But I can tell you the physical side of being pregnant and driving across the state on a bus is different. And having to pump breast milk when you're at a swim meet, sometimes on a bus, with like blankets and stuff. But those two things definitely probably have not been faced by my male counterparts. And it's just another hurdle to be a parent and a coach that I never really anticipated doing, but I did and got through it, and hopefully don't have to go through that again.
And then on the flip side, parents don't feel I can relate because I don't have children of my own. We did foster a teenage girl at one point, and she did swim for me. And that kind of alleviated some things for a little bit because those parents knew her and their daughters were friends with her. But then once she moved on, COVID hit and it kind of everyone forgot. But that part of just not having my own children and not being a parent, it's, well, you don't understand. And it's like, well, I also went through the sport. Like, I do remember, I do understand. The bodily changes that we as women just kind of go through and the hormone changes over the years, no one really talks about, like the 30s to 40s to 50s and menopause and things like that. And so to be in the middle of a meet, jumping up and down and screaming your head off because it's a close race and it's a close meet, and then all of a sudden, either your bladder fails you or your body decides it's time to ovulate, and you're just like, oh Lord. Thank goodness. Well, girl season, when it happens, it's great because we always keep a stock of extra products. So it's a quick dash to go grab that and run off to the bathroom, and we'll deal with it later. And when it's boy season, I start praying internally that my assistant has something, or like, did I leave any in my backpack from the last time? Because it's off. And Ben, I don't think you necessarily experienced that. It's startling. It's a little bit of a surprise, and it's definitely kind of embarrassing and personal.
Yes, but every woman has that, and if you've had children, the jumping up and down doesn't happen so much anymore, I'm just saying. What about you guys, anything that you've had to deal with? I know, that's a tough one to follow, right?
I can't follow any of that stuff. I just think, as a female coach in my school system, you did everything. Nobody ever set anything up for you. They didn't hire your officials. They didn't do anything, where the other coaches, they didn't have to worry about those kinds of things. Now, maybe the guys coach did, but in the other programs, basketball, football, they didn't have to do any of that kind of stuff. So you had to do everything on your own. And even at the end of my career, I was still the one that had to make sure everything got done. And was organized, not the AD, not anybody else but yourself. And I mean, I talked with Eve just a little bit, and sometimes the money deal was all different too. I coached girls, and then when I went into the boys program, this is kind of a reverse issue, is that they told me I didn't have any experience. After all, I only coached girls. So I had to start at the bottom of the pay scale instead of starting at the same level that I was with the girls. So
Mine was, I had one male club coach that was a pain in the butt. He didn't think a female should be coaching. And he was my one nemesis, and proved him wrong.
Yeah, I have a similar story. The first AD that I worked for, I coached the girls for a year, did not get along with the head coach, so I quit because I knew we couldn't work together. Took a year off. That head coach left and left the boys' position open because another woman had been hired to take my spot with the girls. So I applied for the boys' team position. And he sat down and he looked at me and he said, girls should not be coaching men's teams. And I said, A, woman. B, those are boys, not men. And C, I don't see what that has to do with anything. He did end up hiring me because he didn't have a choice. There was nobody else who had applied for the position. And we went, the first year we went 0-14 in dual meets. The next year we went 7-7. And that pretty much, he was very proud of the person that he had hired to coach that boys team after that. But then when I moved back to Grand Rapids, I don't think there were any female coaches in my immediate vicinity of boys teams. And so when I would walk onto a pool deck with my assistant coach, who was like this big bear of a man, bushy beard, the head coach of the program that we were visiting would inevitably come up and shake his hand and go, "Oh, hey, you must be the new head coach at Ottawa Hills." And he got a real big kick out of pointing at me and going, "No, that would be her. She's in charge." And I don't get that much anymore. Everybody's used to seeing me on the pool deck. I always have a place to use the restroom, which is a problem sometimes because they put the boys in the girls' locker room and then you walk in and you're like, "So, I'm breastfeeding and I need to use the restroom for, myself. Where are you going to put me?" And there was a lot of, hold on, let me get a key. So, yeah, I face that periodically. Not so much anymore, though. Anything else that you?
Well, I just think, I never had anybody to help me with anything. I never had assistant coach. I never had anybody that actually coached swimming to help me get going and figure things out. So it's kind of like when you guys were got hired into programs where you were assistants or had somebody to work with, that's something I never had. You just kind of paved your own way.
So speaking of that, you were one of the first women on the letterhead at NISCA, right?
Yes,
and
yeah.
If I had to guess, based on what I knew about NISCA when I started, you were probably the only woman in the room a lot of years.
Yeah.
How'd that
There's really a lot of women in this room this year. And there's way more women that were in the room when I first started going to NISCA. In fact, there were a lot of things that were like, "Really? You guys do all this stuff over and over and over and over?" It was the same thing on Wednesday, and then you did it on Thursday, and then you did it on Friday, and then by Saturday is like, what did you get done? But yeah, I was the only one in the room for the most part. I stuck it out.
She's still here.
Still here, and there still could be more women in the room.
Okay, so what advice do you wish you had gotten as a young coach?
That one's hard for me. I mean, I was with Tom for 14 years. He did a great job mentoring me. The one thing that I came up with, and part of this is just growing as a person, is maybe just make friends with the coaches that are around you in the state, and just don't be a wallflower. Go out there and make friends, know everybody, because they are a support system. And like with the Miska golf trip, like having friends on deck, it just makes it way more fun. You get to celebrate their successes and your own. So I was probably too timid at the beginning, and I would have liked to have made those friendships earlier in my career.
I still feel I'm young, very young, but not taking things personally in the sense of just that first year and the athletes knowing that you're young, you're fresh out of college, and well, our beloved coach just retired. What do you know? They've been here for forever. And to not take some of those threats so seriously. I had one girl try to get me fired for 2 years because she was a junior when I came into the program, and she was good. I wasn't playing favorites, and I try not to, but I will say if you work hard, like, yes, I will give you attention because I see that you're working hard. And then learning that it's okay to do things your own way as long as you can support and back it. I had my first abuse allegation this year, and I was very upset about it. And I remember like calling our AD the moment I found out about it, like in tears, like freaking out, going like, "I don't know if you've heard. This is what's happened. This is who told me," because my assistant brought it to me, and I was like, "We have to report this up." And he did his thing, and I assume everything was okay because I never heard anything else about it. But just sitting down, looking back over my actions and going, well, if you think me calling you out for your behavior on a pool deck is either abusive or whatnot, then you know what, I'll stand by that. And knowing that there are certain things that just because I might offend somebody that I'm still okay with because this is my decision, this is my culture, this is what I want to do, and these are my standards, and this is my line. And just knowing that some people won't agree with that, and that's okay.
I would say listen. Absorb as much as you can from others around you. Read what you can, go to clinics, and just learn from every athlete. Everybody's different. No one's the same. Every year is different. And just be willing to change with the times.
It would have been nice when I was in school if they would have had classes or more classes to teach things that girls would be involved in athletically. Yeah, I mean, I can remember there being like theory of wrestling and theory of baseball and theory of football, but there was nothing about theory of coaching girls, because there weren't that many girls' activities at the time that I was in high school or college. They came kind of a little bit later on, and I was already in the field of coaching and teaching when a lot of the programs got going. But that, I think, would have helped, and I also think that if the administration, and I had a nice AD and everything, and his daughter swam for me, but if we'd had more coaches meetings and more opportunity to share with your fellow coaches. There were no other women on the coaching staff at my school, but it would have been nice to listen maybe to them, talk about some of their situations. And as I ended my career, we had a lot more coaches meetings and a lot more things that were shared in that way. And I should probably say that I had a lot of really good mentors just in the field. You know, I had some really close friends in coaching that are still part of that, like part of your life as a coach, and had such a strong influence on you or on me. And they call me their mentor, and I think, no, ma'am, I learned more from you than you could have ever learned from me. And I think that, like Diane says, you just listen and you learn and you absorb everything that you have a chance to absorb.
So the two things that I wish I had known when I was a young coach was, number one, you cannot care more than they do. Even if you think they can make a state final, if they're not willing to put the effort in, there's nothing that you can do to get them to where they don't want to go. And I beat my head against the wall a couple of years until I finally figured that out. And it's not just the state final kids, it's the ones who come in who really are just doing it because they want to be social, and they have no further desire to do anything more. I mean, you can motivate them, yes, but at a certain point, they have to want to do the work on their own. And if they're not willing to do it, you got to let that like desire for them to go farther just kind of drift off. The other thing is, I wish that I had learned the power of an apology earlier, because when I was a young coach, I was very stubborn. I am still a little bit stubborn. But it was a, when you're young, it's a power thing, right? You cannot let these kids walk all over you. And so I would draw my line in the sand, and I would be like, this is it, and this is how it's going to be. And I put a couple kids off the team over the years because of things like that. And even when looking back on it, even immediately after it happened, and I thought, ooh, I might have let my temper get the best of me. That probably wasn't necessary. It wasn't in my ability at that point to apologize to the kid, because you don't apologize to kids, right? Because then you lose face or power or whatever. But it turns out that an apology when you are wrong is like the most powerful thing that you can do, because it's not relinquishing your own power. It's rebuilding the relationship that you damaged. And it's a bridge to fixing that. And that is one of the things that I wish I had known as a younger coach. And I actually just this year, so this is my, 20th year of coaching altogether. Just this year I did an experiment. So I had a kid who came to me and said, I stubbed my toe, and I was like, I kind of blew it off a little bit because it's a stubbed toe, you're fine. And then I thought about it, as a new swimmer of mine, he doesn't know me very well, he doesn't know the program very well, and he doesn't know, we hadn't had to talk about pain versus injury, and I thought, boy, that probably didn't feel great to come to your coach and say, my toe hurts, and have her go, yeah, that's not really that big a deal. So the next day, I pulled him aside and said, listen, I want to apologize because I didn't handle that very well. I should have been a little more sensitive. How is your toe today? And he's like, oh, it's fine. Everything's fine. And then since then, we've had a great relationship. So yes, power of apology is very important. Someday I'm going to write a journal article about that.
I'll be waiting for it.
Yeah, I know, I told Dana that before. Okay, so what advice do you have now for a young, probably female coach getting started in what is still mostly a male-dominated area?
Well, I would say don't ever doubt yourself because of your gender. But other than that, anything else that I would say could apply to any young coach, right? I mean, just be confident in your decisions, make a decision, stick with it. You can always go back later and make a different decision the next time, and you can admit faults in your decision after something's gone wrong with what you decided. But you still stand by your decisions. Don't doubt yourself. Be confident, and don't waver in the moment.
Ask all the questions. Network as much as possible. I know for myself, the first year I started out in our conference, I had no idea what I was walking into, and it was a hornet's nest with the other coaches. It was bad. Like by year 2, year 3, I was like, all right, this is like a north-south rivalry here. Like, all right, the teams of the north versus the teams of the south. Here we go. And now we're all friends. Like it's literally texts over summer. Hey, how are you guys looking? How are your injuries? Hey, I heard your girl was injured. How are your boys looking this season? And we go back and forth now because we've built up that strong relationship. And if you're looking for mentors and you don't have one, email coaches. Like coldly. I've done it a few times. If you can, email coaches coldly, college coaches that are possibly local to you or ones that you want to learn from. Most of the time, they'll take you on if you want to observe a practice as a high school coach and you're a young high school coach because they want to see the sport grow. And at the same time, sometimes they might even offer you a position, probably not paid, but a position to like help coach their summer camps where you work and gain experience at the same time, which quite frankly, those opportunities are phenomenal.
I'm not really sure, other than be positive, be confident, talk to your people, talk to the parents, be honest, be open, never tell a lie. Always tell from the heart what you feel. And I coach swimming and diving. I'm one of the few. So I get athletes of both mentalities, and they are very different, as Don knows. And just always talk to them in an honest manner.
I thought about the answer to this, all I could think of is that the opportunities that girls and young ladies have now are so much different than the opportunities that I had when I got started. I mean, you couldn't be a 3-sport athlete when I graduated from high school because there weren't 3 sports to be in. And now these kids, they can go from sport to sport to sport, experience the differences in the coaching styles of 3 coaches and the bonds that they create with their teammates in 3 different programs, and sometimes it's 4 because they pick up another one in the summer. And I never had any of that. So I think that, to me, it's just a kind of little bit of a jealousy that kids can come out of high school and really go out running, and then they can pick their college programs and pick up some more of that. So when they do go into coaching, after they're done with their collegiate experience, they have way more knowledge about sport coaching styles than I ever had when I started out. And that to me is awesome.
Well, and thanks for being one of those first ones that made everybody else's jobs easier.
Oh,
Appreciate that.
No.
Okay, so my next question, it actually stems from a story that I have, so maybe I'll just tell it first and then see if you guys can come up with anything. Yes, this is a cold question, sorry. You didn't get a chance to prepare for this one. All of you have coached boys teams, right? Okay. Was there a point when suddenly your gender was either an issue or was made apparent? So this is what brought this to mind. I had a kid that I had been coaching for 4 years. I think I was his second coach because he swam in middle school with whoever was coaching middle school. And we're standing his senior year, almost the last meet of the year. It's our invitational. And he and I are standing back waiting to present his award. And one of the other female coaches from the area walks past us. And she had a tendency to wear like skirts. So when I'm on the deck, it's a Ottawa Hills t-shirt or an Ottawa Hills polo, and then jeans and my orange Crocs, because that's how I don't slip on the pool deck and die. But I don't wear skirts. And she walks by, she's wearing like a skirt, and he watches her walk by, and he says to me, "It's so weird to see a girl coaching boys teams." And I looked at him and I was like, "You understand that I am a female, right?" And he goes, "Yeah, you're just coach." Okay, all right, I guess I'm doing the job then, I suppose. So any of you experience anything like that, or where you being a woman was suddenly like a thing?
Only from some parents.
Yeah.
And it was when I first got into it in the 80s, and it was those parents that thought males should be coached by males, females by females. And you just have to stay strong, prove them wrong.
Oh, I've got two stories that it's popped into
I
mind.
can't wait to hear.
So the first one, I took on middle school boys when we started our middle school boys program. So, okay, I lied. It's 5 years with boys, 1 year as middle school. So I took on middle school before I transitioned to high school. And I was working with them on breaststroke kick. So I was literally in the water, moving their legs for them. And I get to one of my swimmers, and he has a hole the size of a dime right there. And I just look, and I'm like, I'm looking at my assistant, who thank goodness was male, and I'm like, and he's kind of looking at me like, "What are you saying?" And I'm like trying to mouth it all out of like, I don't know how to tell a male swimmer that you have a hole in your crotch and we can all see everything. Thankfully, as I moved on, one of his, like, he happened to get out to get a drink, and one of his buddies saw it, and he just took off in the locker room and grabbed a different suit. But I was like, whew, okay, that one was saved. And then this year, actually, one of my male swimmers has essentially birth defect, whatever you want to call it, but a varicose vein in his testes that would upon occasion flare up and cause immense pain. And when he's trying to explain this to me the first time, he comes in, because he was literally like in the hospital because of his pain. And I was trying to communicate with him, like, how are you doing? Like, are you okay? Like, everyone said you were in the hospital today during school. And he's like, yep, I'm going to see him for practice day. I was like, that sounds like a great plan, because if you're in the hospital, like, it's serious. And he comes back and he's like, well, coach, so I have this thing. And I'm like, cool, what do we got? Like, what did the doctor say? It's a little embarrassing. And I'm like, come on, like, I used to teach health, like, give it to me. And it took him a while, like a good, 10 minutes to finally tell me what it was, because being a female is really embarrassing to just talk about. He legitimately had a testicle issue, and I definitely cannot understand, other than that it must be horrible. And you are clearly in pain. So then I just looked at him flat out, and I was like, all right, well then, if the day you were in the hospital was a 10, it's now 3 days later, where are you at on pain? Well, I'm at a 6. Thank you. That is good to know. And he's like, so if I just stop and practice sometimes, and it's like, okay, like, we're good. Like, thank you for having that conversation. And his parents were trying to get him as a senior to have that conversation with me rather than them stepping in. So once they knew I knew, then it was a very open conversation about what was going on.
Good job.
But the initial conversation was very hard for him. Very easy for me, because I was like, oh, okay, like, cool, that's a medical issue, great, let's take care of it, we'll work around it. But yeah, that one, gender was apparent.
I don't know, I think I just was thinking of the answer for this totally different way. But when I coached girls first, of course, and then when I went into the boys program, they were happy to have me. They thought, well, she's done a really good job with those girls. And all we get is a rent-a-coach. Every year was somebody different. So they never had any consistency that developed in the program, and a different style every year. And I came in to stay for a while, and I did leave, and then I came back and stuck with them till the end of my career. But they could hardly wait to see how good they could be because they had somebody that knew what was going on. And so that, and I do agree, and I did with the boys have one thing sort of like yours. How do you tell a guy that it's time to get a new swimming suit? You know, that it's appropriate for you to tighten it up.
That one might be a little stretched out.
You know,
And I'm
I mean,
sure that-
well, golly, he's on his block and he's doing his start, and it's like, okay.
I'm sure that the men have that problem as well, coaching.
Well, I don't
females.
know, I would be uncomfortable coaching these women here.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about
that
I
last night.
just, no, that's not for me.
I'd say for me, early on, when I was fresh out of college, if the guys knew that they were faster than me, and so some of the upperclassmen were faster than even I was in college, they didn't respect very much that I had to say. The way I got around that was I would just be like, hey, Tom, tell him that he's doing this wrong, and then Tom would just tell him as if Tom was saying it. Tom was the one who noticed it, and it's totally fine. Like, I don't need the credit. We need to get this kid to start doing this differently. And I'd say this year I have a female assistant who's just out of college, and that's happening. And I'm trying to navigate that with her a little bit because, yes, they are a few seconds faster than her 500, but they're also boys. And we're in Wyoming. They're not very fast. They're not very fast in Wyoming compared to a lot of your states. And so it's hard to bring those kids to reality in a nice way. Like, I don't want her to diss them and say, well, do you realize that you don't even have a sectionals cut? You know, like, we don't want to do that. But get them to respect her experience. It's a fine line. It's really hard to walk. So we try to keep it positive, but just trying to teach them general respect. I mean, why are you putting her down because you're faster than her? That doesn't make any sense. Like, pull yourself up. Don't put other people down. So lots of different ways to take that. But
That's good. That reminded me of one of my freshmen when I was first coaching in Indiana. It was a breaststroker, and he swam like this, right? Threw his head up and down like he was headbanging. And he got done with practice one day, and I said, listen, I think if we could get your head still, you could be a lot faster. And he said to me, I am already fast. I don't need to go faster. And I said, okay. So I put him in the meet. He got his butt kicked up and down the pool by breaststrokers on our team, plus the breaststrokers on the other team. And then he came to me after the meet, and he said, what was that you said about my head position? So I have found that you can lead the horse to water, but you can't make him drink. So I will give a piece of advice, and then sometimes it does help if they hear it from somebody else. So I'll go to an opposing coach and I'll say, you know, it would be great. See that guy over there that's got this really wonky thing? I have been trying to talk to him about this for months now, but he's picked it up and he's got it in his head that this makes him faster. Would you say something to him? And so then the other coach goes over and is like, man, I was watching your stroke. You know what would make you faster is if you would do this thing that I've been telling him. And for whatever reason, I don't think it's because I'm female, because I think it's just they get it in their head that they know what they're doing, but then they hear it from somebody else and maybe another person, and then they come back to you and they're like, wait, what was that you said again? Because I've been hearing this, that this might make me faster. So, all right, so all of us have coached boys and girls, right? Boys or girls? Which one do you prefer and why?
They both have their pros and cons. I love my girls because they will work hard in the moment for me. However, on the flip side, part of it might be because I'm female. Guys, I don't know how it works, but there just always seems to be some like alpha female, like, who's the queen bee? Is it me, or is it the captains, or is it the seniors, or there's always someone who's always trying to dominate and kind of take that spot. Maybe you guys have that issue when it comes to coaching guys teams. But at least there's always a little bit of that, or it might just be my school, because I see it on other female teams as well. But then my boys, I could say anything to them, like that they might perceive as like upsetting or insulting, or just, wow, coach, that was like really harsh, or whatever. And like literally 5 minutes later, we're okay again, and it won't come back up, and they kind of just let things go. But man, oh man, I don't know how to keep them focused. They're a different breed. I don't understand it.
Racing. We
They're-
do a
they're-
lot of racing.
They're very special. My boys are just very special, possibly too much exposure to chlorine. But there really is, there are pros and cons to both. And it's just, which one do you prefer, I think.
I prefer boys. There's no drama. The girls, they work hard. They don't complain as much as the boys, but the lack of drama makes the boys win. That's it.
Yeah, that's me too. You can't pay me enough to go back to coaching the girls. I did that for 5 years and that is it. And I didn't even have to coach my own daughter. I don't know how anybody does that. But yeah, I find the boys hilarious. I think they're hysterical. They make me laugh every day. They are some of the strangest and funniest creatures on the whole planet. There is nothing funny about a teenage girl. Just nothing. I don't find anything amusing about that. So yeah, boys for me, for sure. But you guys?
There pros and cons to both. Girls are definitely more dramatic. Boys are more subdued. I've not had one cry. Boys like to play games hard, whereas some of the girls, you wonder. We love to play something called watermelon ball. It's a ball that has water in it, and it's just like water polo, but it doesn't always float. It sinks, it's unpredictable, and the boys love it.
Well, for a good part of my career, I coached the girls, and then I go into the boys, and my girls would work harder than my boys would. And they just would. I don't know what the deal was, but I think part of it was that a lot of the boys that I coached in this one segment, which was like 3 years, and then I was out and then came back in, they all came from cross country and track. And the cross country and track coaches had this idea that you should rest for every competition that you had. And I told the boys, I said, we don't rest. And I had one, this just happened, this story just came back, is the swimmer that I had was just inducted into our Hall of Fame. And he told the story of that he had a really poor state cross-country championship. And so his dad came in, he coached my divers, and he says, if I come in and coach the divers, will you coach the swimmers so you can see if you can help Don be a champion? So, okay, we'll come in, and he says to me, I told him right away, I said, I'm going to make you a state champion. Okay. And we get to the first swim meet, and it's on a Tuesday, and he says to me on Monday, he said, I get tomorrow morning off, don't I? And I said, nope, you're going to learn how to swim fast tired. He just kind of like, uh-oh. And that's what that's what the boys had to do, is they had to learn how to swim fast tired. The girls knew how to do that because we trained that way all the time. And he was our first state champion at Jamestown, and he won 2 events, and both were record times for the school, not for the state. And the appreciation, of course, that he had afterwards. But I find that the girls work harder, but I liked them both. At the end of my career, I would have much rather coached the boys' team for more years, because my team was so bad with drama that there was no way I could fix it. There was no way. It was broken.
So that actually brings up another really good question for those of us who don't coach girls anymore because of the drama. I assume that everybody has it on their girls' team because it's just a thing. Have you found anything that works well for alleviating the drama? Like if you can't nip it in the bud before it starts and you've gotten into it somehow, have you found a way to get back out of it and pull the team back together that works 90% of the 50% of the time?
Yes. If they're having a problem, they write it on the card or a note card or something and put it in the box. They can pick it up on their way back out.
Is that to get them to let it
They
go?
leave the problem while they're in the pool. They can pick the problem up and they go back to the locker room.
Does that work?
Yes, it does.
big box?
Is it a big box?
It's not. It's not. But they know they can do something. They do it. They write their problem down. Sometimes that just helps. And then they get in with the team and team environment. It does help.
Go for it.
I think it's a novel idea. Do others have the ability to look at the problem in the box, or who?
Do others have the problem to look at the like problem in the box?
Or
No,
you?
they do not. It is not for them.
Do you look at it at all?
I don't look at it. And the kids have different colored cards, sorry. So they don't share. It's their problem.
I do something similar with my boys during taper time. Because once I get the lineup in for the conference meet, like that's it, my whole job is done. And now I've got a week with nothing to do but worry because this is what I do. And so I have a manila envelope that has like problems, issues, and worries written on it. And I have the boys write whatever they want on these little scrap pieces of paper, and they fold it up and they stick it in the envelope. And I tell them I will carry this around with me, and I do. It's in my bag or it's on my workout notebook all the time for the whole week. And so if you need to keep writing things down, you just come grab another scrap piece of paper and stuff it in there. Nobody looks at it. I made that mistake the very first year I did it with the girls. I thought, oh, I'm going to see, what they're worried about. Maybe I can help. Oh my gosh, don't.
No.
Oh my gosh, you really don't want to know what these kids are stressed out about. And then it's your secret to carry with you because you can't tell them and you can't tell anybody else. And so yes, I don't look at what it is they're worried about, but I do carry that around with me. And I do it visually, like I hold on to that so that they can see me doing it, because this is my whole job, is just you let me do the worrying, you just go swim fast. And that actually works pretty well.
I will say though, the years I've had the least amount of drama with my girls are the years where I explicitly take the first week of practice and I split up all the friends. And I pair them up with different swimmers. Sometimes different days we switch different partners all the time. Sometimes every year I permanently assign them a big and a little. So my seniors partner with the freshmen, my juniors will go with my sophomores. But I've noticed in the 8 years I've been doing this, the years I explicitly take the time and I do not rush my first, like I do a team camp the whole first week, and we spend the majority of the time team bonding and just going through protocols, procedures, like this is how we do dry land, this is how we run drills, and I really slow everything down. I have the least amount of problems with inner conflict. The years that I don't do it as diligently because I assume they'll remember from last year, that's bad on me. And we've had more issues during those years and less family-like structure, and like those family years are the years I'm very proud of, because those are the ones where the girls really come together. They've got each other's back. We had all in one year, we had a mom get diagnosed with breast cancer. We had a dad have a stroke. We had a couple of other parents lose jobs, and those girls just rallied around each other because I had already set up that support and I had hammered it into them. So even though so-and-so danced with so-and-so at homecoming, even though we all know that like athlete A has had a crush on him all season, at the very least, they're able to not bring it out in the water. Whereas the years I haven't done that, it rears its ugly little head. And a little bit more publicly too.
Mm-hmm.
So you try to get ahead of it. And if you don't get ahead of it, then that's where you start seeing a lot more of that cattiness, and a lot of that drama will be amplified, I think.
I think every year is different. I have individual conversations a lot, and every year is different. I have nothing that's consistent other than just trying to take the time to let them know they have an ear. They don't always use it, and I think keeping the team focused on the end goal helps. We've had a lot of success, so they get to keep focusing on continuing that success, and they all want it. So they all have that in common.
Literally, best piece of advice I got yesterday about coaching girls is the girls have to bond before they battle. Yeah, and the boys have to battle before they bond. That was like literally, I whipped out my notebook in the middle of just a random conversation and started writing stuff down because I was like, this is gold. It's like a 2-sentence little like, mind blown. I never thought of it that way.
See, I always thought of it as the difference between training cats and dogs. Like you teach a dog, you can either reward them with food, which we do a lot with my boys' swim team. I will take you out to dinner if you do this thing. Or you can swat them on the nose with a rolled up newspaper. Either way, the dog is still happy to see you and they're very excited. Training a cat, on the other hand, and this is why I'm not a good coach of girls, I have not figured out how you train a cat because they will do what they want to do when they want to do it. And if your goals align, fine. If they don't, you're in for a world of hurt and the claws come out. So that was always my philosophy. All right. Anything else that has come up that you guys want to talk about?
Or something?
What's that?
Well, I was just thinking that back over the best years that I had is when the kids got along.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have to do anything.
Yeah.
If they had an issue with, one girl got all upset because the color of the shirt that we got or at the beginning of the season was not the color she wanted. So the girls just said, well, then you can pick the color for state. End of problem. And the problems that I had at the end of my career wasn't as much the kid, or was the kids because of their parents.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how you can bring the parents into your team atmosphere. They're supposed to be out there doing their thing, but I had mom run down on deck and just start chewing my butt in front of my AD, my superintendent, and the head of our activity association because I wanted to try a different girl in the relay who swam faster than the other girls that were in the relay on Friday night. I hadn't even made the decision. It just ripped our team apart, and there was no way to pull it back together. You're at the state championship. It split everything. I don't know how to fix that. Get rid of the mom. That's what it was. I had 2 moms, and I thought, oh my God. I asked my AD, I said, can I coach one more year? I was retiring that year. Can you let me coach one more year so I don't have mom A and mom B? Just give me a chance to have some fun coaching again.
All right. Since our audience is mostly male, any of you guys got any questions for the female coaches that you're burning questions that you would like to have answered by
I
us?
do have a question.
Greg?
This comes from the College Coaches Association conference that I was at a few years back. They had a similar session, and one of the people in the audience said, I'm retiring this year. And it was a man who coached men's and women's at the college for years, and they said they were determined they wanted a woman to coach the women's team. No women applied. And the question is, how do we get more women to apply? And there was no real good, this is how. And I was wondering if you had any insights into that.
Well, judging by this short little data collection we just did, and knowing my diving coach is similar, coaching the opposite gender seems to be the preference. So open up more male team coaching positions to women, and there you go, you get more women applying. That's a hard answer. That's a hard question to answer. It's a very small data pool, but I just think that it's easier to get along with opposite gender in general for most people.
What would it take, because you 2 are young and would be looking for new jobs potentially. What would it take for you to want to take specifically a women's college coaching job?
Oh, women's? I'd probably take in a heartbeat because they want to be there.
Okay.
There's no pressure from, in my perception, my very limited perception, and when I briefly swam college, and I got along with the girls on my college team way more than the girls on my high school team because everyone wanted to be there. Everyone was focused on the outcome of the team, and they knew that coming into it, which made it so much easier than the kids like my sister who was pressured to swim because their older swimming. Their siblings had swam. We invested the money. You're going to do this. Come college, I was D3. I walked on as a sophomore because I took a year off. and had no idea. I walked onto a team that was ranked 8th in the nation till it was wake up swim for our first dual meet, and coach stood there and told us all of that, and I looked at him and I remember blatantly thinking, why did you let me join this team? Like, I know my worth. I am exhibition quality. I am exhibition material. I am literally holding your team back. Single-handedly, I can guarantee that. But just the amount of drive and dedication that those women have, oh yeah, I would, at least I perceive that I would coach a women's college team, no problem. However, I think a lot of that would have to do with the culture that's set at that school. And the culture that the previous coaches have had, I would ideally, personally, would start as an assistant under a strong coach. Doesn't matter if they were male or female, but that they had values that I aligned with. Because if I don't align with their values, I'm doing the team a disservice, because everyone will be able to read right through that. Whether it's for equity numbers or whatnot, Title IX numbers, what have you, me applying for a position where our philosophies don't match or my philosophies don't match with an athletic director, it's going to be rough for everyone. And so if there's a way to make those philosophies and values a bit more obvious to potential applicants, or if you know that there's a specific person or like a group of people that you want for a job, just I don't know, maybe like a way to reach out more, because I know I see a lot of coaching applications on some of the swim coaches exchanges that I'm on. Some of them are there looking for college positions, some are looking for club positions, and they don't state their preference per se. Other than that, we just want somebody who knows what they're doing. But very rarely, I don't think I've seen any of them post their philosophy, post their values. That might make a difference to someone who's driven and wants to coach at that level.
I think societal, I don't know if I want to call it pressures, but just the way society is, women are expected to do the brunt of child rearing most of the time. So like I was pregnant on the pool deck when I was a volunteer assistant with my first. 2 years later, 2.5 years later, I had my son. He was born in June. I was hired in July to run the girls and the boys teams. So I have a 3-month-old on the pool deck with me all the time because I'm not getting paid enough to have childcare, especially for an infant. So the kids, both of my kids, were on deck with me from the time that they were born, essentially. And I only ran high school. So I started in mid-August. And then we didn't have any time off in between the seasons. Well, I did because I didn't go to state meet with that group. So I had 2 weeks in the middle of the seasons, and then I went until end of February, early March. And I know that the way that I coach, I put a lot of my time and energy and emotional energy into coaching. And it's part of the reason why I dropped the girls team was because it was just too much. That 6 to 9 months that I was investing in the team, I was a terrible parent. And my husband worked full time, and I had a part-time job too. So, and I think I would imagine that anybody who is a coach who either has or wants to have children and looks at that college application is just like, this is too much. I don't know how I'm going to do this. And I still, my son is 17, and I still feel like a neglectful mother because there are weeks. He's on the team with me, but there are weeks we get home from practice, and if my husband's out of town, there's no dinner on the table. The house hasn't been cleaned in a month. And I apologize every year to my family for coaching because it takes a lot of my energy. And I can't imagine coaching a college team, women or men, and trying to raise a family at the same time.
Yes, that's why I'm childless right now, and still choosing to be. But even to piggyback off of that, though, it's sorry, formulating my thoughts while we're talking. Looking at how much I do anyway in my school district, because I teach full time. I am also an aquatics director, and that does not come off of my teaching contract. So I am also do that, and I am the head coach. I run our summer swim program because that's part of my aquatic director duty. So I live at the pool anyway. So sometimes I see these coaching contracts come out, and I always just dream that the grass is greener on the other side, even though I know nothing about recruiting and the training trips and the time away from home compared to not being at home but being 2 miles away versus literally being across the country trying to recruit people, which is a completely different aspect that I have no idea how I would handle. So yeah, that's what I got.
I would just say, just from a standpoint of men versus women, women don't have the confidence that a man has necessarily, statistically speaking. And so sometimes I think it's about, like, if you know someone who could be good, reaching out, because younger women and girls especially are going to doubt their ability, whereas statistics say a guy is going to believe he can do it, whether he can or not. A woman has to feel like she's going to kill it first time, or to even put herself out there. So I think sometimes it's about reaching out to them and just letting them know, like, hey, I think you could be good.
Also, if you are a woman and you're watching this, you can kill it. You're better than those guys that think they can and can't. So go out there and do it. That's what I'm saying.
Put in the application.
Yeah, Kurt?
Well, I know I missed part of this, and I apologize, but I have a very important question. When I was involved in another organization, National High School Coaches, and I was an officer, and I worked with lots and lots of coaches in sports where there was men's and women's like this. The men, not the women, but the men who coached the men's and the women's, in almost all cases, would relate to me that they had a lot of trouble coaching the women's because they had trouble getting them as a whole team. They had a tendency to be smaller groups. In other words, when you came in as a swim team or a tennis team, which were my two sports, they would tend to collect as their social groups as they were in school. The women did. And so they would maybe have 2 or 3 social groups in the team that were very tight. Where in the men's side, and you guys would know this, on the men's side, for some reason the men could cast that aside and they would be one at the team level. Now sometimes there was a little bit of problem with that, but nowhere near the problem that they had trying to break down the little cliques. But once they broke those cliques down and turned that team into, boom, one team, then they were really successful. And I'm wondering if, as women, were you able to overcome that more so with the girls than these men were?
Well, I think Nathalie kind of spoke to that when she talked about her experiences with her best years ever were the years where she broke up the friend groups and put them with different people and kind of created this new set of relationships.
But it has to be very intentional. Going back to that family mentality, my biggest team was 45 girls, and we had 2 girls that didn't buy into the family philosophy that everyone else bought into. Like, all of my veteran swimmers bought into it, my freshman swimmers bought into it, and we had a junior and a sophomore that decided they were coming out for it, and they just couldn't wrap their heads around the family atmosphere because every other sport that they were a part of didn't have that same mentality. And it kind of freaked them out a little bit that we literally did everything together because we see each other the most, and yet we don't get to talk very often because you're staring at a black line for 2 hours. And so for them, they were just having a very hard time with that. But during COVID, I mean, all the cliques ran rampant because that's all they could hang out with. And it was easier for me to group them by cliques because if I started mixing and matching, there goes my whole team if someone was a close contact. And that got really, I'm still recovering from that, quite frankly. I really am, because it's been one of those where for the freshmen that were seniors, that's all they knew. And that's trickled down, and it's me trying to figure out, how do I get back to where we were with that family atmosphere when they've been so segregated from each other for so long, in part by force and in part by choice.
All right, well, we're like 5 minutes over our time now, which is pretty impressive because I didn't think this was going to go more than 10 minutes. So well done, ladies. Thank you, and we'll see you guys here.
Nice job, all of you.